Videography tips, 10 ways to approach every story with Marcus Ubungen and Drobo. Hi everyone, my name is Samina and I'm the marketing director at Drobo. And today we have Marcus Ubungen with us here today. He's a creative director and filmmaker, and he's going to be giving us 10 tips for getting together and creating videos. And he has done several commercials, so he's going to be walking us through 3 commercials that you've done. And the agenda is we'll talk to Marcus, and then we'll talk a little bit about Drobo. And if you have any questions for us, make sure you type them up on the sidebar. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. And also, we're giving away a $100 gift card, so stay tuned to the very end. So we're going to announce the winner at the very end. All right, so let's get started. So Marcus, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I work in the commercial directing industry. I work with advertising agencies and partner with brands to create content, whether it's 30-second commercials you might see on television, web series, branded content type of real people stories, all the way down to those pre-roll clips that you try and skip on your YouTube videos.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And how did you get into videography and filmmaking?
So I've always sort of tinkered with my parents' camera as a kid, doing stop record edits with VCR tapes and always kind of messing around with that stuff. And in college, I didn't really find something that inspired me until I got to film school. And funny story, my dad was a military guy, and he made me sign a contract stipulating that if I failed at art school, that I would sign up for the military. So I had a lot of motivation to succeed.
I can see that. I know I was going to say that that's very generous of him to let you tinker around with his equipment.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I encourage anybody to do it.
All right, great. So let's get started. So the first slide we're going to see are the 10 tips that you want to consider. So they are research, rapport with talent, theme, conversation, not interrogation, rephrase and reframe, location, look and feel, continue rowing, environment, and go with the flow. And Marcus is going to go through each of these tips with the 3 different commercials that we're going to see today. So let's get started. I believe the first commercial is the Samsung Febreze commercial. All right, great. That was a beautiful commercial.
Thank
You
you.
want to tell us a little bit about what you did here?
Yes, so we were working with Samsung. Their campaign at the time was the next big thing, which you guys probably have heard of. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to find real people doing extraordinary things. So we did a series of these, but I love Fabrice because he is literally the next big thing. He's the Guinness World Record holder for being the tallest ballet dancer in the world.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so they wanted us to tell his story, his version of the hero's journey, like where he came from, what obstacles he faced, and like where he is now.
So one of the tips that you cover here is research.
Yes, so research for me is something that anybody can do on your subject. So I want to know this person's story from back to front. I want to know about them more than they know themselves a little bit, right? This gives you a baseline that helps you inform your story that you want to tell. But then also, you're not coming in blind, right? You can come in and have talking points about where they've been, and maybe you guys have things in common. So it makes for better conversation.
It does, and a stronger connection as well when you're filming.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And then how did you build rapport? That's your second tip.
Yes. So the last thing you want to do as someone who's shooting a documentary or meeting someone is to show up with a camera and a ton of crew people. It can be very intimidating for someone who's never been on camera before. So what I like to do is I like to interview this person almost like a pre-interview. I like to meet them in person, just me and maybe my producer, or even do a Skype call or a phone call at the very least, just to establish a rapport and some trust to let them know what your intentions are, what story you're trying to tell. And then this way, when you do show up with your crew, there's one familiar face that they can trust and they can always sort of go to you if they're not feeling comfortable. You're the person that they can sort of confide in if it's becoming overwhelming.
Right, that's important.
Yeah,
be comfortable on set.
You can't have anybody open up to you about their life if there's no trust.
Right.
Yeah.
And so another thing that you talk about, is theme. So do you usually determine that by yourself, or do you work with your client to determine that?
It's a little bit of both, but I think as a director, you want to go in knowing what the story is about, right? So for Fabrice, for example, it's about never giving up or pursuing your dreams at all costs. That was what I sort of interpreted his story as. What you'll see in a lot of journalism or reporting or news footage or people who are starting out is there's a lot of random footage or B-roll about something happening, but there's not really a point of view and you don't really know what the story is about. Stuff is just happening on screen, but there's not really a cohesive thread or a spine that kind of ties it all together.
Okay. And then another thing that you talk about is conversation versus interrogation. What do you mean by that?
So if anybody's ever been interviewed for a job, you know it can be very nerve-wracking just sitting across from someone asking you rapid-fire Q&A questions, right? So if you multiply that by tons of people putting a camera in front of somebody and you ask them these questions about their life, people tend to close, shell up. So what you want to do is keep it loose, get the conversation going, keep it conversational, leave the cameras rolling, and really bring them up to temperature first before you ask them the hard questions, because nobody wants to feel cornered, because once they do, you lose trust,
right?
And it all goes out the window. So don't be afraid to let things go, keep it conversational. If they want to stop, reset, just go with the flow. Don't force anything, because that's the worst thing you can do.
I know. Anytime you have a camera in the room, the anxiety level goes up.
Yeah, people become very aware of themselves, and if you can establish that rapport, then have them focus on you, then everything kind of melts away.
Okay, and the final tip here is reframing. What is that?
What I mean by reframing is really getting the person you're interviewing to rephrase and reframe the question in their answer, right? Because nobody wants to hear the interviewer's question in our edit. If I were to ask you, how long have you worked at Drobo? If you just said 10 years,
right,
and we put that in the edit, no one would have any context, right? So you would rephrase my question in your answer. I worked at Drobo for this. And what that does, it gets everything straight from the horse's mouth, right? Like everybody can hear the story straight from the person who's telling it. And even better, if they can walk you through a story using sensory details. So if they tell you their life story, but they tell you what it felt like, what the day was like, were they sweaty, what kind of smells were there, anything that kind of can put you in that time and place becomes very, very powerful as a storytelling technique.
And that's very evident in this commercial because the story was said very beautifully and it just flowed very nicely.
Yeah, and that is also cutting together all the questions that I had asked him. Like that was probably a 3-hour conversation that we condensed. But again, it was conversation back and forth. He was telling me about his family. I was telling him about my family, where I came from, and just our different dreams and goals. And that kind of, becomes a big part of it.
Awesome. So we're going to take a look at the next commercial that you did, and I believe this is a Gatorade commercial. So
Yes.
let's take a look at this and get some tips from this commercial.
Great.
All right, great. So you want to tell us a little bit about the background of this commercial?
Yeah, so this was a commercial for Gatorade where we used pretty much all of their roster, 5 different pro athletes ranging across different sports. And yeah, it was fun. We only had each athlete for about 4 hours and we had 5 days. So we would shoot JJ Watt one day and then we would ship drives back to our editor and we would leapfrog to the next city. So while we're shooting in a different city, we would be sending footage back from the day before.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, the schedules were pretty tight, and but it looks good. It looks like one cohesive thing that was married together really nicely.
And I really liked the gritty feel of the commercial. So how is the location important?
So as it relates to this Gatorade spot, plus anything that you do, by the way, is scouting locations is key. If you show up and you don't know where you're shooting and you're figuring it out on the day, one, it looks really unprofessional, and 2, you might be kind of in a less than ideal situation. Maybe it's loud, there's traffic noise, the light isn't where you want it. So I scout every location. We do that as part of our prep.
Mm-hmm.
But I also note the sun's location and the time of day that you want to shoot. So there's a ton of apps that you can get for your phone that will track the sun's position. You can enter the day that you're shooting and what time you'll be shooting, and it will give you a precise location, and you can frame your shot depending on where the light is. And the sun is free light, so it's a very affordable way to make use of the sun. If you notice, everything that we shot that was an exterior in the Gatorade commercial, all the athletes are backlit, and that was all by design. So
is there a particular app that you refer to?
I think there's one called Sollight, 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 but there's a ton.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And then another tip here is look and feel.
Yes. So with any project, you want to decide the look and feel, whether that's the mood. Is it something that's brighter that looks more like a romantic comedy, or something very gritty, lots of shadows and contrast? All this look and feel does is sort of creates a mood for the viewer, right? Is it more gritty? But also the shooting style. Is it locked off, very composed? Or is it kind of handheld, right, with the action, just catching up with what's happening, similar to this Gatorade project? So deciding all that will sort of filter down from your theme, So Fabrice with Samson was a little quieter, a little more internal, emotional about his story. And Gatorade is just like in your face, high paced, dynamic action.
And music plays a large part of that as well.
Yes, music and sound design is all part of the edit, and that's a big part of it as well.
Awesome. So the last commercial that we're going to take a look at is a Walgreens commercial. So let's take a look at that and get the final tips on those. That was really beautiful. What was this about?
So Walgreens partners with a company called Vitamin Angels, where they help prevent blindness in undernourished children all over the world. So anytime you buy Walgreens vitamins at Walgreens, a cut of it goes to Vitamin Angels to help kind of give vitamin A drops to children under 5, and just overall vitamin deficiency that they address across the world.
So this seems like it was a difficult commercial because there were so many different locations.
Yes. So for this, it's actually, we shot in Guatemala and we faked 4 countries in one location. So it goes back to all that scouting locations that we talked about earlier. We made 4 different areas kind of in a proximity of each other feel like 4 different countries.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's through art direction and casting, but again, all the stuff you saw outside was scouted for the time of day, and everything looked and felt different. The beginning shot was like right before the sun came up, and then we shot in the afternoon, so the sun is really low and kind of directional. All that stuff, when it comes together, it creates kind of this juxtaposition of time and place, and really gets people to feel like they were in a different area of the world.
So one of the tips here is continue rolling.
Yes. Whether it's documentary or stuff where you're working with real people or performance with kids, is when you have an instinct to cut camera, my advice is don't, because usually people, when you call out rolling action, everybody kind of puts on a show and they become a little bit more than themselves, right? They're hyper aware of the camera. And as soon as you call cut, they sort of sink into who they are, and they're smiling, everything's a little bit more relaxed. So even if you call cut, I would not hit the button right away, because like you saw there working with kids, we just kept the camera rolling all the time. And even before they showed up to the set, we would already be rolling and anticipating for them to show up.
And that's when you typically get the best shots as well.
Yeah, if they can be themselves and not realize that you're rolling, it's great. These people aren't actors. We casted real parents and real kids. And
you talked a little bit about environment as being one of the tips about how the location was important.
Yes, using environment as a character I'm a firm believer in that. So learning about somebody and their story, they can just tell you, but I would want to see like how these people eat, what's on their shelves, what kind of clothes they wear, what do they do for fun. Things around you, the details in the environment sort of say more about you than if you were to tell me, right? If you told me you were a clean person and there was a mess everywhere, I would make my own assumptions. But getting those details wherever you shoot, even if they end up on the cutting room floor, just take a minute to spray the room, really sort of find those telling details that could reveal character.
Awesome. And the last tip you have is go with the flow.
Yes, so go with the flow is go in with a plan. Have a plan, a shot list of the main things that you want to capture, but be prepared to throw all that out. When you're working with real people, everything's unscripted. You don't know if they're going to zig or zag. You have to anticipate and react, and when things happen, it's a good thing, and then just course correct as you go, because that's where the magic happens, right? There's people saying if you get the exact story that you thought you were going to get going into it, then you're not doing a good job.
Awesome, great. So those were the 10 tips. Thank you so much. So we're gonna have some questions at the end, but I know this is a question that most people who are looking to get into videography will want to know. Do you have some tips for someone who's looking to get into filmmaking?
Yes, so anybody can buy a camera now. The playing field has been completely leveled. You can self-publish on Vimeo, YouTube, you can create your own channels. And even this, we're doing our own show here on the internet with very little, like the price of entry now for any content creator is very minimal. So, but my suggestion is you can have the fanciest cameras in the world, you can have all the tools, but they're just tools. If you don't have a good idea or a good story, a good theme, good kind of thought process or substance, then everything falls flat. The playing field has been leveled, but there's not a lot of tastemakers out there, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
So it doesn't matter. I've started using Canon 5Ds, very DSLR cameras that have gotten staff picked on Vimeo that have been tons of views and viral type of stuff. Like, it doesn't matter what tools you use. If the content's good, people will watch it.
Okay. Now I have a very important question for you. How do you back up all of your information and data? I'm sure you have terabytes of data.
I do. So it's kind of a mix, and it's not the most efficient because I have shelves of tons of tiny external hard drives to kind of bigger plug-in desktop drives, and everything is all piecemeal in different places. And if we're doing a big commercial like some of these, I have to travel to all these remote places, and we are shipping drives at different times. So day one, day two, two of two,
Right.
three of two, like three of four, like everything has to be sort of organized. But to answer your question, mine is very sort of inefficient.
Well, this is a great segue for Drobo, and I'm going to introduce Rod Harrison. He's our CTO at Drobo. He's been with the company 10 years, and today we actually launched Drobo Access, which is a remote access, so you can access your files remotely on your network Drobo. So I'm going to hand it off to Rod.
Thanks, Samina. Hi, everyone. I'm actually really excited to be able to talk today because we do have some very cool stuff I'm going to talk about in just a minute. But before I get there, I want to quickly explain what a Drobo is, just in case there are some people listening who don't know. So a Drobo basically is a big box you connect to your computer that lets you store all your files, all your photographs, your video projects. And the Drobo can take 4 or 5 or even more hard drives. And what we do is we spread your data across those hard drives so that if one of those drives fails, your data is completely safe and protected and nothing ever happens to it. And whilst the repair is happening, your data is available to you. You don't lose access to it while the rebuild goes on. And so basically, Drobo is the easiest to use storage array in the world. It's the easiest to set up, and it's the easiest to manage. And what that gives you is, it gives you your time back. You don't have to spend a lot of time managing a Drobo. It just takes care of everything. Storage is a tool, and we want to make it as simple to use as a tool you might pick up from the hardware store like a hammer. So if we go on to the next slide. Drobos work in all sorts of different areas. We have Drobos that fit really well in all sorts of businesses. But the area I want to talk about today, obviously, is the media professionals area. So we have a little Drobo Mini that's about 4 inches by 2 inches. That's really portable. It's great for taking on location. Creative professionals love to take that on shoots with them. We have a Thunderbolt Drobo that's really fast. You can edit your projects directly off. That works really well. And we have network attached Drobos that everyone in your office can share access to at the same time. So as your projects move through the workflow, through each of the specialists in the workflow, they can all access those projects directly from their workstations, and you don't have to deal with trying to move external USB drives from person to person. They're all just accessible all the time. So if you move on to the next slide. Today, we are launching a product that addresses the #1 request that we have from Drobo users. So our Drobo users have asked us for a while now for access to Drobos when they're on the go, when they're away from their office, when they're on location, when they're traveling, and they want to be able to access from phones, from tablets, portables, even from a hotel lobby, right? So it's very important these days to be completely mobile. And we haven't done this before. We haven't done it because it's actually very difficult, and the solutions that were possible weren't very good. So if we skip on to the next slide, our solution to this that we're launching today is these are some of the challenges that make it very difficult. If you wanted to do this today, you'd have to open your firewall manually. You've got to figure out where your computer is. Your IP address changes from your cable router, from your ISP. These things are very complicated to deal with. They take time. You can solve this today yourself, but it takes time. It's difficult. You have to be very careful. You'd open your computer to the internet. That has implications. You need to make sure everything's secure, that no one else can get in and get at your stuff, mess with your stuff. So you can do it, but it's difficult. And one of the things that Drobo does, one of the core values of Drobo is preserving simplicity. So what we do is we make everything as simple as possible to use by taking care of all the complexity ourselves under the covers. And our customers really value that in Drobo. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't brought a remote access solution before, because we haven't been able to bring a solution that we felt was good enough. And today, I'm very excited to say that we have. So if we skip on to the next slide. Today we're introducing My Drobo, which is a solution for remote access to your Drobo. Basically, what My Drobo is is a secure tunnel with end-to-end encryption from your Drobo right the way out to your phone or your tablet or whatever browser you're using in a hotel or an internet cafe or whatever. So My Drobo is a service that connects your Drobo to the internet securely, completely securely with end-to-end encryption. And what My Drobo does, it enables us to publish some apps via that secure tunnel that you can then access via your phone as if you were on your local network in your office or in your home. So we skip on to the next slide. The first app we're publishing is called Drobo Access. And Drobo Access is the app that actually lets you get access to your files, as the name implies. So this, again, runs over the My Drobo service. And you get to choose the name you want. So, for example, I could have rod.mydrobo.com, or you could have marcus.mydrobo.com, and that's just a name that I would type into the browser. We have iOS apps, Android apps to support the tablets and phones directly, but you can just use it via the browser if you want. Now, My Drobo Access gives you a couple of things. You can access your files yourself, so you can see your photos, you can access your videos, read PDFs, whatever you need to do. But you can also share files, and this is really very cool. So you can create a URL, which is a little link that you can give to someone. They pop into their browser, and that file will pop up for them. So you can with those URLs, you can share folders, and you can give people a password so they can control a little bit better who has access. You can say whether they can upload into that folder, and you can even set an expiration date. So I can say, I'm going to share this file with you, but after 3 days, that link just stops working and no one else can get at the files anymore. And because it's running over the My Drobo secure tunnel, everything is completely end-to-end encrypted again, so nothing in the middle. It goes through it. We are using a relay partner, but everything is still encrypted end-to-end in that relay partner. The relay partner can't see anything. It's encrypted in the device, and it's encrypted in the Drobo, and nothing in between is plain at all. So it's a very secure solution, very easy solution. You can install My Drobo with one click. You can install Drobo Access with one click, and you can be up and running in a few minutes. If we skip on to the next slide. This slide shows the range of Drobos we have, right down from the mini I mentioned earlier, which is that really portable solution, all the way up to really big, small and medium business and enterprise solutions. And the Drobos in this lineup that Drobo Access and My Drobo runs on as the Drobo 5N and the Drobo B810N. Those two Drobos there are network Drobos. They're connected to your networks at home. And now with My Drobo and Drobo Access, they can be connected to your phone anywhere you are in the world. That's it for My Drobo.
We have time for a Q&A, and so I'm going to ask you a couple questions here, Marcus. So one question that comes up a lot is, how do you work with people who are not real actors?
That's a really great question. So usually when I work with real people, there's a reason that we're working with them, something that we found compelling, or they're part of a specific trade, or there's something about them that is interesting. So for me, and this works with actors too, or anybody that you might be shooting, is I try and get some physicality out of them. So if we're shooting them in an environment, instead of having them just sit there, I would have them do an activity that they're known for doing, something that they can do well. In the case of athletes, obviously you put a ball in their hand and they don't become shy on camera. They just do what they do. If Fabrice is a dancer that we saw earlier, just get him to dance. Just if you can get someone to do something physical, it usually takes their mind out of being, looked at by a camera, and usually these tend to ease up a little bit. So. Okay,
I have a question for you. So is there a particular type of camera that you like to use in terms of brands?
Yeah, so most of the cameras that we use for commercials are by Arri. I use the Alexa primarily, but for a lot of the more nimble documentaries where we have to get into really tight spaces, something like a Canon 5D or a C100 or C300 would work really great. If we were to shoot inside of a car that was moving, we had to jump out really quickly, having a small size camera would be the right tool for the job. Okay. So while I spit out all these names and brands, there's not necessarily one right tool for the job.
Okay, awesome. A couple of questions for Rod, and I'm going to sum them up. Rod, what is really the main difference between MyDrobo and Drobo Access, and where are they available and where can you download them?
Well, MyDrobo is really the infrastructure piece that provides the service that that the Drobo Access is built on. So MyDrobo is really what connects your phone or your tablet to your Drobo 5N, and Drobo Access is the application that runs on top of that lets you access your files, create share links, and that kind of thing. Both MyDrobo and Drobo Access are available today, and they're available if you launch Drobo Dashboard and go to your 5N or B810N. You'll see a tab in there called Drobo Apps. They'll be right at the top of the list. Just one click to install MyDrobo, one click to install Drobo Access. Choose the name you want, rod.mydrobo.com, marcus.mydrobo.com, and you're done. That's it. And the iOS app and the Android apps are available today. They're available in the Google Play Store and the iOS App Store.
And the winner of the $100 gift card is Jessica. So reach out to us at marketing@drobo.com and we'll get that out to you. Thank you again so much. It was very informational, and hopefully we can help you out with your storage needs.
Great. Thank you.